Look at your kitchen today. Close your eyes for a moment and listen carefully to the incessant metallic hum of your refrigerator's compressor. That sound, which you have learned to ignore as if it were white noise from nature, is, in reality, the sound of your technological collar. In 2026, the absolute dependence on the electrical grid to keep your food alive has become your greatest and most silent vulnerability. If the power fluctuates due to a government rationing decree, if the bill becomes unpayable due to galloping inflation consuming your efforts, or if the centralized system simply decides that your zip code is no longer a logistical priority, what remains in your freezer is only accelerated decomposition, the tragic waste of months of work in the field, and the icy cold of fear of tomorrow. They convinced you, through decades of colorful advertisements and manuals for disposable appliances, that cold is something that can only be manufactured by noisy machines. Polluting chemical gases like freon and electronic circuits with planned obsolescence designed to fail exactly when you need them most. They created in you a deep technical amnesia, a hereditary disconnection that erased from collective memory how humanity crossed millennia of scorching summers and harsh winters without ever touching a plastic switch. They want you to believe that conservation is a premium subscription service you pay for monthly through your electricity bill, when, in reality, conservation is a law of thermal inertia that is waiting patiently beneath your feet, just 1.5 meters below the grass of your property. They hid from you that the Earth is not just a dead substrate for planting, it is a giant thermal accumulator, a passive planetary-scale reactor that holds the memory of climate with months of delay. While the outside air reaches 40 degrees of suffocating and oppressive heat at noon, the deep Earth remains submerged in a cool, stable, and constant silence of 15 degrees, immutable, eternal, immune to stock market crises, international embargoes, or hydroelectric collapses. Today, in this manual of technical resistance and absolute sovereignty, we will unseal the ancient cryodehydration and geothermal cooling cellars. We will learn to design and build the free man's refrigerator, a rustic engineering structure that consumes not a single watt, requires no maintenance contracts, and preserves the nutritional integrity of your harvest with a vitality that no industrial freezer, no matter how expensive, will ever be able to replicate. If you are ready to cut the last umbilical cord that ties you to hungry urban dependence, and want your pantry to be an unshakable fortress against any scenario of global scarcity, subscribe now. Join our vanguard of self-sufficiency. The Metabolic Shielding Manual is open, and your emancipation from the centralized grid begins now. To master the art of wireless conservation, you must first unlearn the modern and limited concept of refrigeration and embrace the physics of geological inertia. Imagine the Earth's crust not as packed dirt, but as an infinite insulating blanket, composed of overlapping layers of silicated minerals, decomposing organic matter and time itself. The sun beats the surface with infrared radiation, but heat is a slow and heavy energy when it encounters the molecular density of soil. It takes months to travel through particles of clay, silt, and rock. This creates what the apothecary engineers and architects of the 1800s called the retarded thermal wave. This is the master key of our resistance. In our rustic engineering, we do not spend energy fighting against the summer heat. We simply hide from it within time. When the outside world is living through peak heat in January at 1.5 meters depth, the soil is still processing the coolness stored from the past winter. It is a chronological displacement of temperature that the industrial system needs you to ignore so that you remain a slave to the maintenance of artificial and paid-for cold. The geothermal cellar technique is based on absolute stability, while the air above the grass can fluctuate 30 degrees in a cycle of just 12 hours. The deep cellar does not vary more than 2 degrees in an entire semester. It is the thermal silence that paralyzes biological time. But there is an even deeper biochemical secret that conventional agronomy manuals funded by the chemical industry have erased from their pages cryodehydration by vapor pressure differential. When we store roots, fruits and grains in an environment where the temperature is constant and humidity is governed by the deep transpiration of the soil, we induce a state of deep metabolic dormancy. In your home refrigerator, the air is forced, turbulent and dry. It acts like a sponge that steals water from inside the cells of your vegetables, breaking their internal structure, oxidizing their vitamins and transforming the original flavor into something plastic, bland and dead. In our technical resistance, we use what we call the Earth's breath, a relative humidity that fluctuates precisely between 85% and 90%, the exact equilibrium point where the plant does not lose its constitutive water to the environment, but also does not allow excess moisture to initiate the process of sulfurous putrefaction. The enzymes that cause accelerated ripening and subsequent decomposition are switched off by the constant cold of the soil. The plant does not die. It enters stasis. It is for this reason that you will be able to harvest your apples in March and bite into them in December with the same turgidity, the same sugar, and the same biological vigor as the day they were harvested. This is not a mystical promise. It is the rigorous application of the laws of thermodynamics applied to survival biology. Now, approach the edge of the excavation and observe with the clinical rigor of a mining engineer the materials that make up our fortress of freshness. Technical authority demands that you understand that the soil beneath your feet is not a uniform material, and its insulating capacity depends entirely on its mineralogical composition and density. The first fundamental pillar is the choice of terrain and topographical orientation. For your cellar to be an unshakable success in 2026, you must seek the side of the property that the sun visits least during the solstice. In the southern hemisphere, look for the southern face of hills, where shadow is cast by the very curvature of the earth. Look for areas where clay is the absolute queen of the subsoil. Clay is our high-performance geological polymer. Its microscopic plates retain moisture and block heat migration with an efficiency that modern concrete, porous, conductive and dry, will never be able to offer. If your soil is sandy, you will need to compensate with the law of depth in the physics of Earth. Sand is a fast thermal conductor. Clay is a slow thermal shield. The second pillar is the mineral exchange coating. Forget Portland cement, that industrial material that sweats acidic condensation and serves as a nursery for pathogenic fungal colonies. In our resistance, we use basaltic stone or low-temperature fired clay brick. Why these materials? Because they are paramagnetic and endowed with intelligent natural porosity. They allow your cellar to breathe in symbiosis with the surrounding geology, exchanging ions and keeping the air charged with negative charges, creating an environment that is, by nature, hostile to mold spores, but welcoming to the cellular longevity of your food. It is the engineering of the 1800s protecting your future. The third pillar is the lignin and tannin structure. For the shelves where your abundance and the sweat of your labor will rest, use only dense woods rich in natural extractives, such as oak, cedar, or heartwood eucalyptus, seasoned by time. The tannin in these woods acts as a passive chemical preservative, a biological barrier that prevents the moisture of the cellar from rotting the very support structure. Avoid the use of metals that oxidize or plastics that release toxic microparticles in closed and humid environments. The master of technical resistance knows that, in a geothermal cellar, the material that supports the food becomes an integral part of the preservation ecosystem. Each wooden beam must be treated with pure linseed oil, or beeswax, sealing the porosity against microbiological invaders without contaminating the air you breathe. Prepare your tools with the discipline of a medieval master builder and the vision of an alchemist apothecary. The effectiveness of your cellar does not lie in the gross volume it occupies, but in the intelligent management of the internal microclimate. Follow these protocols with the rigor of an 1800s engineering manual. Step 1. Stability excavation. You must not stop digging until you reach the thermal inertia line, which is generally found between 2 and 3 meters of depth, depending on your latitude. It is in this abyss that the temperature stops following the frantic seasons of the year and begins to follow the annual average of the planet. The shape of your cellar must be circular or ogival arch to avoid the dead points of stagnant air that inevitably occur in square corners. In the geometry of resistance, the circle is the shape that best distributes the pressure of the earth mass and guarantees the natural circulation of coolness by convection. Step 2. The atmospheric convection ventilation system. This is the vital technical secret that separates a functional cellar from a damp, dark, and moldy hole. You must install 2 lungs in your structure so that it lives. The intake duct must capture outside air in a zone of dense shade and descend to ground level of the cellar. The exhaust duct must be positioned at the highest point of the ceiling, exiting to the surface through a chimney painted matte black. Why black? Because the sun will heat the air inside the external chimney, creating a zone of low pressure that will pull stale air, excess CO2 and ethylene out, ensuring a constant renewal of oxygen without the need for electric fans. It is the physics of thermal ascent working enslaved to your independence. Step 3. The drainage and controlled humidity floor. Never, under any circumstances, seal the floor of your cellar with concrete or asphalt. The floor must be a 20-centimeter layer of coarse gravel, followed by a layer of clean quartzose river sand. This functions as a geological hygroscopic lung. If the cellar becomes too dry during a dry spell, moisture rises by capillarity from the deep earth through the sand. If there is excess condensation, it drains naturally into the soil, keeping the environment at the exact equilibrium point that prevents the wilting of your roots and the death of your harvest. Step 4. The double-stage thermal shielding door. To enter your fortress, you must pass through a temperature airlock. 2 heavy solid wood doors separated by an insulating antechamber of 1 meter. This creates a cushion of static air that prevents the mass of surface heat from invading the cold sanctuary of the cellar every time you enter or exit. In our sovereign engineering, every calorie that enters is considered a serious design failure. Critical storage protocol. The master of resistance stratifies their production with chemical wisdom. What requires more cold and relative humidity, such as potatoes, carrots, and beets, must be buried in boxes of damp sand at floor level. What requires more air circulation, such as onions, garlic, and winter apples, must occupy the upper shelves. Never store apples near tubers without efficient forced ventilation. The ethylene gas from the fruit is the chemical signal that makes potatoes wake up and sprout before their time, destroying the starch and conservation. Organize your abundance following the chemical and gaseous hierarchy of nature itself. Many ask in their modern ignorance, why not just use a Chinese solar generator and a state-of-the-art modern freezer? The answer lies in the biophotonic integrity of food and mechanical resilience. When you freeze a plant cell to -18 degrees, the water inside it expands violently and forms sharp ice crystals that pierce the delicate cell membrane. When you thaw that food, it is a collapsed biological structure, plant corpse that has lost 40% of its active enzymes and essential vitamins. In our geothermal cellar, we practice preservation in a living state. The potato you take from the sand in August is still an organism capable of generating life if it were planted. It maintains its electrical charge, its chelated minerals, and its intact and nutritious starch structure. In the world of 2026, where the nutritional quality of market food has collapsed to basic survival levels, possessing living food is the difference between the robust health of your lineage and dependence on industrial supplements and pharmacies. Furthermore, sovereignty demands absolute resilience. A photovoltaic system can be damaged by an electromagnetic pulse, a hailstorm, or a simple defect in an inverter chip that you cannot repair at home. Your cellar of earth and stone is technically invulnerable. It has no components that can be blocked by software updates or tracked by smart energy consumption sensors. It is the absolute technical silence, the strategic invisibility before the central control system that monitors every watt you consume. Imagine yourself now at the height of a systemic supply crisis. While cities panic at the end of cold chain logistics and supermarkets empty in 48 hours, you calmly descend the stone steps of your clay fortress. The fresh and sweet air embraces you. The smell of clean earth calms you. And there they are, organized in rows of technical authority, the reserves that will ensure the vigor and strength of your family throughout the harsh winter. You are not just storing calories to avoid hunger. You are storing your time, your health, and your political freedom. By sealing the door of your geothermal cellar today, you are not just finishing a rustic construction project. You are physically signing your Declaration of Independence from the invisible networks that suffocate the human spirit and family autonomy. You have transformed your soil from a simple piece of ground into a vital stability reactor. The result will be felt first in your palate and shortly after, in your financial and emotional security. While the world desperately chases volatile digital currencies to buy processed, expensive and dead food, you will have the deep peace of one who masters the engineering laws of 1800. The peace of one who knows that their biological survival does not depend on a copper wire coming from a distant power plant under state control, but on the depth of their technique and the sacred respect they have for the thermal cycles of the earth. You will notice a fascinating spiritual and psychological phenomenon. By stopping futilely fighting against the seasons and starting to use them to your advantage as technical tools, your anxiety about the future disappears. You begin to look at your harvest not as something perishable that will spoil tomorrow, but as precious mineral capital that you have safely invested in the bank of geology. This is the conclusion of our trilogy of primary sovereignty. We mastered the electricity of the roof. We learned to mineralize the earth with fermented ashes. And now, we have built the sanctuary of eternal preservation. You now hold in your hands the tripod of real freedom. And from this point forward, the centralized system has no more psychological or physical tools to blackmail you with hunger, cold, or darkness. But technical resistance never sleeps, and absolute self-sufficiency demands that you know how to firmly protect what you built with sweat. It is of no use to have energy, fertile soil, and stocked food if you do not have the right tools to harvest and defend your territory in a silent, lethal, and efficient manner. Homemade metallurgy and the forging of precision tools are the next inevitable step in your evolution as a sovereign. Therefore, prepare yourselves. In our next meeting of technical resistance, we will enter the forbidden domain of backyard metallurgy and heat. Treatment of scrap steel. We will learn to forge your own autonomy in iron and fire, transforming the remnants of industrial civilization into cutting tools that will last for generations. Keep your cellar cool as the heart of a sacred mountain. Keep your earth fat and your stocks full to the ceiling, and keep your spirit focused on the absolute independence from any centralized control or consumption algorithms. Technical resistance is a whisper that moves mountains, and it is the only path to lasting freedom in this turbulent 2026. Until the next chapter of our emancipation, stand firm, stay under the protection of the Earth's inertia, and remain sovereign.